Hello everyone and welcome to another installment of Slammin Synapses. If you are viewing me through YouTube, you'll see a subscribe button up here. Click up that, keep up to date with the latest ongoings here. If you want to drop me a comment, you'll see something below there. This segment is also going to be submitted for possible inclusion to the PW Insider family websites. That's pwinsider.com, pwinsiderelite.com, and pwinsiderextra, no E. .com. Feel free to check them out on Facebook and on Twitter. You'll see something on here to indicate that. Like I said before, the Elite site's a great paid site to go to. Lots of great audio, lots of great video. Doubt you'll be disappointed because I am not. I have embraced Twitter. At the end of the segment, you'll see where you can find me on Twitter and follow me and keep up to date that way too. Branching out into many venues here to get this more out there and more exposure for that. So, like I said, that information will be available at the end of this segment, so stay tuned. Segment that we're going to be going into is the following. This came to me as a suggestion from a friend of mine. I don't know if he wants his name to be... Well, then again, I've mentioned his name in previous installments. He hasn't had any problem with it, but a friend of mine named Travis Berry submitted this segment idea, so we're going to talk about that. If you are familiar with what's been going on in wrestling, OVW has signed up or is now a developmental thing for TNA Wrestling. Now, it's interesting how OVW can be a developmental territory for TNA when they're also working with ROH. I think WWE's involved with them as well. It's just a fascinating turn of events there. What does this have to do with this segment? Well, a lot of people ask, well, what does it take to become a professional wrestler? Myself, I've always been a strong advocate of independent wrestling, more than anything else. Some people get into wrestling because they are like football players, or they were athletes at school, or things of that nature. Some of them, they had that characteristic that they go into wrestling right away and kind of bypass all the work per se that goes into getting there. There are those people that have really sweated, really put in their heart, really put in their work to hone their craft and become a wrestler today. Wrestling federation that I used to work for, Scott County Wrestling, then merged with AAW. It's a federation in the Midwest that has such superstars as Danny Daniels, Silas Young, Shane Hollister. They've been graced by Scott Steiner and Rhino, things of that nature, Billy Corrigan. I mean, federations like that exist for people to hone their craft and get better. Now, I'm going to get up here for just a moment. If you're going to be a wrestler, and this, I see this done more than anything else, is that they stand out here, and what you're going to want to get used to is doing things like this. It's like a Hindu squat, I believe. And it's not like they do 5 or 10 or 20, but they do like 100 or 200 of this. Now I can do this for the rest of the segment, and you probably would have to call 911 for me, but it's one thing you'd want to get used to doing if you want to do something, because it's part of the workout, it's part of the training process, gets them involved. Now, there are some fly-by-night schools out there, if you could call them schools, that are more money grabs that say, oh, just give me your money, I'll teach you to be a wrestler, and they don't really focus on the essentials. It's like, okay, I could hit you with a chair, you could hit me with a chair. Les Thatcher many times has mentioned that some schools are just nothing but that. It's like, okay. And there are some wrestling cards that I've seen where the matches were just them hitting each other with chairs and light tubes and things of that nature, and not really getting paid for it. If you're going to go through all that, get paid for it. Don't do it for free. Otherwise, it's a mugging that people pay to see. But yeah, like I said, there are money grabs out there from people who claim that they are going to teach you how to become a professional wrestler, but in the end, they're charging you hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars, and doesn't get you any further to signing with TNA or WWE or things of that nature. It's just they line their pockets, and you just go away with the assumption that you're a professional wrestler now. And there are a lot of professional wrestlers out there who really aren't professional wrestlers. It's just amazing. But there are some reputable schools out there. There might be a reputable school near you that's may not be run by people that you're familiar with, but in our case, we were lucky enough to be graced by the Man Scout Jake Manning. He was with us. He's taught some of the people there a bit. Ours was the training ground for Gix, later known as a person you may be familiar with, and I've mentioned many times before, Tyler Black, who is now Seth Rollins in FCW. FCW itself is a developmental type of system in the fact that they are developing their guys for WWE. Because all their stuff is so that they can make the transition into the Federation, and they know what the Federation wants. They have an ideal what they're looking for, so that when they get in there, it's no surprise. Now, if you're a wrestler going from one federation to another, you carry that style with you. You might have to make some little tweaks, but it's really not going to matter, because some federations will let you go and be yourself, along with other people who are just like themselves. But FCW is the developmental system. FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. But they hone their people so that when they put them on WWE, there's really nothing more that they have to learn with regards to what's expected of them on WWE programming. Now out there you will see people like Gangrel running a school. Gangrel, former member of the Brood. You'll see Lance Storm. Lance Storm, he has a school up in Canada, I believe. The Dudleys have one. The Watt Samoans run one. Who else? I'm trying to think. There's one other name that came to mind. The Hearts have their school. But yeah, there's a bunch of reputable places out there that will show you how to hone your craft and be a professional wrestler. Because they've been there, they've done it, they've been through the ropes, they've been through the paces, so that they know how to train and bring people up to where they need to be. Most of the superstars that you see on shows these days came from developmental places like that. They are in it to teach you and not be a money grab. There's a lot of people out there that's had the training, that's had the know-how, that's been through the paces, that have suffered through the punishment, per se, of becoming a professional wrestler, which is what's required. It's not just hitting people over the head with chairs, it's not doing flippy dives or anything. It's getting in the ring, it's working on the body, it's working on the mind skill, it's working on the craft, to where everything seems to be natural. If you've ever seen wrestlers train from day one, and you wonder, okay, like, what does this have to do with, looking at them, it seems a bit clumsy. Because they're teaching their bodies to do things that they're not really meant to do. Think about it. Go outside, throw yourself on the floor. Second thought, don't do that. I don't want you to get hurt at my expense. But people do things with their bodies that it's not meant to do, like falling on the floor, like doing flips, like jumping off ropes, like coming off ropes. If you come off, I've come off ring ropes, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just kidding around, and don't kid around because it's going to get you hurt. But it's like, to go into the ring ropes, it's not this soft, fluffy thing that you just bounce off of. Think of rubber tubing with a cable inside. And if you come into it the wrong way, I mean, you could really hurt this area. You could really hurt your rib area. You could hurt your arm. It's like you could hurt yourself just going into the ropes. But yeah, they go through the paces with the body slams, with the falling. One of the first things they teach you is how to fall, is how to take a bump, so that when you are landing, you're protecting yourself. I've heard Les Thatcher mention on Wrestler's Eye Audio that his body has gotten trained so well that if he ever goes outside and like it's raining or snowing or something and he missteps, he knows how to fall so he doesn't get hurt because of all the training that he did for that. But yeah, you learn things like body slams and flips and rolls and working with opponents, because with wrestling it's all about trusting your opponent. It's all about trusting your opponent. It's not you. It's trusting them enough so that they can help you do what you need to do. And my segments will never be kayfabe. It's like I tell you what it is, right? I tell you what it is straight off. But basically, it's a matter of trusting the other person with your body, so that they will make sure you won't get hurt, and you, in turn, make sure that they don't get hurt. Now, while there are people out there that say wrestling is fake, for the most part, there is training involved, so that when you do go out there, you put on a good show, but at the same time, you're protecting yourself as best as you can. I mean, there's some things you really can't protect yourself from. I mean, you pretty much have to go through it and try to minimize things. I mean, try jumping 15 feet off the ground, soaring onto something or anything. Try doing some flippy thing on your back. Try... What else? Not so much fake. Wrestling to me is not fake. Granted the the acting outside is a bit fake, but for the most part, wrestling is a dance, so to speak, between two people putting things together, making them flow, and entertaining the masses. I mean, you never hear people say, "Oh, that play's fake. That TV show's fake." It's never like, okay, I'm watching Friends and people say, "You know that Phoebe, she's fake." It's like, no, you hear people talk about things like plays, things like musicals, things like soap operas, which in a sense it is. You hear people talk about that in a sense like, okay, there are these people that come out doing what they do best, entertaining the masses and putting on a good show. And that's what it's about. It's about putting on a show where people will come see you, be entertained, sit there for about 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 4, 5, or 6 if some federation decides to put their audience through a grueling marathon TV taping session. For the most part, it's all about putting people in a seat, keeping them there for about 2 or 3 hours, and making sure they go away happy. So they walk out the door saying, "Hey, I had a good time." They will probably tell their friends. They'll come down, they'll see the show, and it's like, okay, they might like it, so then they bring more people in, and it just builds on from that. It's like, what can I really equate this to? In case you tell 2 friends, they tell friends, etc., etc., etc. Myself, I got into wrestling because I was turning on the dial and looking for something to watch and saw Andre the Giant taking on 3 guys. I saw that, I loved it, I appreciated it, and it became me. This was back in 81, 82, now it's 2011, duh, and I'm still into it. I am still into professional wrestling as a diehard fan for that. But if not for these developmental territories, if not for these trainers, if not for these teachers that taught these people how to do what they do, I would probably be watching ballet or boxing or World Championship tiddlywinks. But yeah, there are, like I said, there are places out there that will train these people so they can put on a show for you. So that you walk away, so you walk away happy, you walk away ecstatic, you walk away thrilled from what you saw. And that all began with them. People like the Lance Storms, like the Wild Samoans, like the Dudleys, like FCW, like the Hart Foundation, like Ace Steel, trainer of CM Punk, like Jake Manning, like Johnny Rods, like Vern Gagne. I could drop names forever and a day, but they are names that put their fingerprints on the business, sculpted the people into what they needed to be to become superstars. Now, granted, there are people out there that do enter, stay there for a cup of coffee, realize it's not for them, and get out. There are those that realize the work that's involved in it, and they stick with it. They work with it. They learn from it, and they grow. I remember seeing people like CM Punk when he was just starting out, back before he was in TNA, back before he was in WWE. When he used to do his famous Pepsi plunge, I saw a match between CM Punk and AJ Styles where he did a Pepsi plunge and broke the ring. Did it, I believe, off the second or third rope. Now, Pepsi plunge, if you're not familiar with the maneuver, think of Triple H doing the pedigree, but it's more like off ropes for the most part. Developmental wrestling, independent wrestling. If they are ever in a town near you, go watch it. I've ring announced. I've done ring announcing, I should say, and I've done it before crowds of 200, 300. But then the same aspect, I've done ring announcing in front of like 20 or 30 people. But those 20 or 30 people realized they wanted to come to the show and be entertained. So even if the crowd's light, just sit there. If you like it, go back. If you don't like it, move on. But give it a shot. Because you never know that through independent wrestling or the developmental schools, when you might see the next big thing. It's going to wrap up this segment. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about next week, but stay tuned on Facebook and Twitter for that. If you want to drop me a comment, feel free to do so. You can email me. Like I said, you can try me on Facebook at my name, Albert Gourier, or at my Facebook or at Twitter at Slammin Synapses. So, sorry about that. In any case, we're just going to wrap this segment up. Forgive the last 2 seconds there. So, for Albert Gourier, this is Slammin Synapses saying see you next week. Have a good day. And keep reaching for the stars. Good night, everybody.